Welcome to the Discover Health podcast, where we explore the power of gut health, nutrition, and lifestyle to help you feel your best every day. I'm Dr. Josh Sharp, your guide on this journey to better digestion, more energy, and overall well-being. Each week, we'll dive into expert insights, practical tips, and real-life strategies to help you discover health. Ready to start discovering? Let's hit the trail. Welcome back to another episode of Discover Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Joshua Sharp, and with me today is another new friend and a very special guest, Dr. Sachin Patel. Sachin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Joshua, it's my absolute pleasure. So looking forward to our conversation and grateful for our friendship.
Me too. So for those of you that don't know, Sachin is most notably a father, a husband, a philanthropist, a functional medicine practice success coach, international speaker, and an author. His philosophy is that the doctor of the future is the patient, and he is actively doing whatever it takes to keep people out of the medical system and empower them through education, self-care, and remapping their mindset. His superpower is taking complex ideas and then distilling them down to their essence with an easy to understand analogy. Sachin uses this gift to help transform the lives of thousands of people around the world through his organization, the Living Proof Institute. Sachin leads by example and motivates others to take ownership over their own health. He is a passionate visionary that serves as both a teacher and a guide to help people create their best life and bring out their inner healer. Thank you again so much for joining me today, Sachin.
It's an honor.
First question I want to ask you is, what got you into healthcare? What motivated you to go to chiropractic school in the first place?
Funny question. Probably not the answer most people expect. It was actually a Porsche. So let me explain. My father was seeing a chiropractor for some elbow pain he was dealing with. And he told me to come with him one day to his doctor's appointment. And so I went with him, and sitting outside of the doctor's office was a beautiful 911. And I just fell in love with that car. And I knew about that car. I'd seen it in magazines. I'd seen it on TV. I'd seen it in posters, but I'd never seen one in person. And when I saw it in person, my jaw just hit the floor. And it turns out it wasn't the chiropractor's car, but I didn't know that at the time. And so the
chiropractor had the jalopy that was parked next to it.
So my brain created the association of, oh, if I'm a chiropractor, I could drive this car. And that's one of the, subconscious drivers for me. Now I have two Porsches, which is, kind of brings us to a full circle moment. But that was the initial spark to just that possibility that I could have my dream car. And then, as I matured and grew up and started realizing, okay, I've got to do something that I really love and I'm passionate about. I remember how much that chiropractor helped my dad, right? Someone I love, someone I care about, who didn't want to take drugs, who didn't want to take medications, or simply put a Band-Aid on the problem. The chiropractor helped him get to the root cause. And so I always appreciated that. And philosophically, as a household, we always kind of shied away from drugs and medications and even like traditional doctors, because we always had grandmother's remedies. And somehow magically they all worked. So anytime you sprained an ankle or hurt yourself or cut yourself, we always had like a home-based natural solution for it. And, philosophically, I feel like chiropractic was very much in alignment with my upbringing. Again, it helped my father. And then, for a brief moment, it even sparked my my curiosity of what's possible financially as a practitioner as well. And so in school, I almost became a dentist. So I went to undergrad school here in McMaster University near Toronto, and I was really good with my hands. I won my shop award in my high school. So I loved building things. I loved, power tools and equipment and stuff like that. And I love taking like a raw piece of wood and turning it into art. And so, what also piqued my interest was dentistry. But in college, or in university, we call it here in Canada, I did kinesiology, which is the study of human movement. And, it's a natural progression into chiropractic or physical therapy or the movement arts. But then I also dabbled with dentistry. And I almost became a dentist because I love the idea of using tools and I love the idea of taking something and making it beautiful. But then I realized that the majority of my time would be spent working on people's mouths and I wouldn't be able to talk to them while I was working on them. And I love having conversations with people just like we're having right now. So chiropractic was like perfect because I get to work with my hands. I get to, take this beautiful body and make it work better. And I get to have conversations and dialogues with people and I get to impact their whole health. Right. And of course, the further I've gone down this path of being a functional medicine practitioner and chiropractor and father and all these things, I now work with a lot of dentists who are whole health dentists because dentistry is actually a powerful window. If you look past the teeth, it's a powerful window into the rest of the body. And I do a lot of work with breathing and breath work. And of course, our facial structure, a lot of it has to do with our oral health and hygiene, but also our dental structure and arches. So I guess in some ways I'm still, kind of walking the line here between a chiropractor and a dentist in some ways. We do like talk to our clients a lot about oral health because it's a hidden source of inflammation for many people.
Yeah, as a chiropractor, I did a lot of cranial work, and so a lot of suture work, putting your hands in people's mouths. And I would always get frustrated going to the dentist. They would put their hand in your mouth and then ask you a question. And, almost want to have a conversation. It's like, well, how am I supposed to answer with your hands in my mouth? But I can tell you from experience, as soon as I put my hand in someone's mouth to work on a suture, I've never wanted to talk to somebody more in my life. Then it's like, oh man, I can't talk to you, but I want to ask you all these questions now that my hand's in your mouth. So it's funny how that works.
Sign language.
So yeah, sign language. That's what they're going to have to learn, sign language. So could you tell us a little bit about what your work is now and how you're helping people, how you're working with people right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go back to like 2 years into practice. So we're talking about like 18, 19 years ago now. I was featured on the news. I started off working as an associate in a ART based practice. So ART is active release technique. So mainly soft tissue, repetitive strain injuries, things like that. So you end up working with a lot of athletes, marathon runners, people who use power tools a lot, right? Who have repetitive strains. And so it's a lot of stress on your body physically, right? I used to have these huge thenar muscles. They're pretty flat now because I don't use them as much, but my thenar muscles look like a bicep because we were just grinding away at people's soft tissue. And when you have a football player come in, they're like 3 times the size of a normal person. So we were doing great work, however, and that landed me on the news. My boss at the time, English was her second language. She was a Canadian, French-speaking Canadian who lived in Cincinnati at the time. And so she didn't like the idea of going on live television. She said, Patel, you do it. I said, okay. And all of a sudden, when the news story ran, which was about lateral epicondylitis or tennis elbow, we ended up having a whole slurry of people come in. None of them had elbow pain except one lady. Everyone else had some sort of debilitating chronic health issue that I had no idea how to help. And so around the same time, I started learning about functional medicine. Thank God for spam. I got a spam email, never signed up for it or anything. So that's why I call it spam, from Ron Grisanti. So he must have bought like the Ohio chiropractor email list or gotten a hold of it somehow. And I was somehow on his email list. But that email changed my life because he was presenting case studies of people just like the people that were coming into my office that I eventually had to turn down because I didn't know where to send them. I didn't know how to help them. But then I started getting these emails and I saw a golden opportunity to be of service and to help people that, nobody else could help. And so that's when I got into functional medicine and became part of his first graduating class of Functional Medicine University. And once I see something, I just kind of jump all over it. I was like that with ART. Once I see something and the power and the influence and impact they can have on people, I just jump all over it. So I did that with active release, had a great run there. Did that with functional medicine, had a great run there. And then functional medicine, as many people know, can get complicated very quickly. So I think we reached a point of peak complexity a few years ago and started realizing that we need to simplify things. We need to get things more dialed in. And, I still use a quote from Steve Jobs, who quoted Leonardo da Vinci, that the ultimate sophistication is simplicity. And so I started realizing, well, they're the ultimate, sophistication to me is a human body, which means it should be simple to take care of. And so I started seeking simplicity in health. What can I do that can be the simplest yet most profound thing that I could teach to somebody that produces measurable results as quickly as possible? That became my mantra. And then the other thing that we did was we created a program that asked a few questions. One question was, if I had to guarantee results, what would I do? If I couldn't do lab testing, what would I do? If I couldn't prescribe supplements, what would I do? And if I had to actually collect data to demonstrate the power and benefit of what I do. So with these questions in mind, we developed a program called Living Light. And Living Light is essentially, simple health practices that your grandmother would have probably told you to do, combined with coaching, mindset shifts, and a homeopathic formula and an aura ring. So we use wearables in our practice. And by coaching people through this 10-week process that we've developed, we're seeing rapid transformations in their health, measurable transformations in their health, undeniable transformations. And we're doing it all with just one homeopathic spray: lifestyle, environment, coaching, and accountability. And people lose 20, 30, 40 pounds in those 10 weeks. Their energy levels are transformed. Their hot flashes go away if they're women. They're experiencing better sexual health. They're experiencing less brain fog or completely eliminating brain fog. Their diabetes and blood sugar dysregulation disappears. So all of that happens very quickly because the body doesn't resist. And then now we license that program to practitioners as well. So that's like a long-winded answer to your question, but I think it kind of helps people understand the evolution of my journey.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love the idea of taking something that we as people have made so complex and simplifying it. Well, what does the body need? Let's give the body what it needs. What are the things that the body doesn't like? Let's try to remove or limit the exposure to those things, and simplifying that approach. We make health way more difficult than it needs to be. So I love that simplification of it. So I know that you do a lot of breath work. What inspired you, pun intended, to get into breath work, and how does it relate to what you're doing with metabolic health and in terms of improving people's lifestyle, like you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So breath is the zenith and the intersection of sophistication and simplicity. So it's where these two worlds intersect. It's something that we do 23,000 times a day, whether we like it or not. It's, the one thing that is literally where the answer is literally right under our noses and nobody's talking about it. So it started for me about 8 years ago. I went to a Wim Hof breathwork experience. And by the end of it, I was able to hold my breath for almost 4 minutes. And so I was kind of blown away with the ability to be able to do that. And I just had these, just a profound experience, like just to go through that process with a group of people, all breathing together, all kind of synced up together. And we, at the end of that, we did a cold plunge, and we were all outside in the middle of February here in Toronto, freezing our butts off, but we were able to use our breath to dry ourselves off. So no towels. You get in the ice plunge, you walk out, and then you use your breath and body movement to dry yourself off. So I never thought that was possible until I experienced it for myself. And then I met the instructor there, Giovanni, and him and I became fast friends. And at one point, he started offering breathwork experiences using his methodology called elemental rhythm. And so I went to it, and then he offered it as a training, and I was part of his first graduating class. So I was like, sign me up. I want to be able to offer this to others. And during COVID, I was able to help people learn how to breathe better and take them through these profound breathwork experiences all over Zoom. It could also be done in person. And that helped me build this whole new community of pulmonauts, we call them, people who love to breathe. And then I started going down the anatomy rabbit hole, went down the oral health rabbit hole. I went down the facial structure rabbit hole. I went down the lymphatic rabbit hole. I went down through the myofascial system rabbit hole. And I started realizing that breath has a profound influence on so many areas of our health that nobody is connecting the dots for. And so I just started sharing this information, and lo and behold, it was blowing people's minds. I mean, it was blowing my mind as I was learning it, but nobody was connecting the dots from all these different areas, right? The spiritual side of it, the physical side of it, the anatomical side of it, tying in the diaphragm, the tongue, like all of these structures. And it just stuff that you would probably all know as clinicians who are listening to this, but just connecting the dots in a way that makes sense and helps you see it in a way that you can't unsee it anymore and you can't ignore it anymore. And that has opened up so many doors for me. I just did a podcast all about this for the CellCore community. I'm speaking at IFM next week, all about breathing and breath work. I'll be facilitating breath work at IFM for the first time in their history. So it's been very well received, and not many people are talking about it. And so I'm just running with it and trying to help people breathe better everywhere I go.
That's fantastic. And I couldn't agree more with all the many ways that your breath and the movement of your diaphragm, it interacts with everything going on in your body, and it's so interconnected. And it's such an amazing thing that you have unconscious control of. It's happening even when you're not thinking about it, but it's also happening consciously. You can control it if you want to. And so with that, you can kind of direct what's going on in your body. And that brings me to my next question. You've often referred to breathing as kind of the steering wheel of the nervous system. Could you elaborate on how breathing patterns influence the vagus nerve? Probably a lot of people may not know what the vagus nerve is, but it's becoming a popular topic. And then what's its effect on the overall nervous system?
Yeah, so our breath is essentially the bridge between our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So we have what's called the autonomic nervous system. And I'm just going to keep it really simple for people. So the autonomic nervous system is regulating literally millions and millions of different functions in our body of all of our cells. So it's regulating your respiratory rate, your immune system, your digestive system, all the things that are happening in the background that we're not really paying much attention to are being controlled and synchronized and regulated by our autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system, for simplicity's sake, has two divisions. It has a parasympathetic division and it has a sympathetic division. So sympathetic can be thought of as fight or flight. Sympathetic dominance is when we are perpetually in a fight or flight state. And this is a survival state. So if a lion were to walk into your office right now, you don't even have to think about it. Immediately, your breathing pattern would change, your heart rate would increase, your blood pressure would increase, and you would either fight whatever it is that's fighting you, or you would run away from whatever is chasing you. And so that happens without us giving any conscious thought. And I didn't realize the power of this system until a few months ago when I was attacked by a dog. So I had this huge 170-pound dog break away from its leash, come charging right at me. And without any thought, I was able to fight it off and push it away. And the owner was then able to grab it and take it away from me, or take it away from the situation. And I didn't realize it until after all the cortisol wore off that I injured my back at the time. So, many people who are stuck in perpetual fight or flight, they don't feel pain. Oftentimes they don't feel emotion. They can be, short and snippy and of course, functions in their body that are responsible for them to thrive shut down, right? So for example, when that dog was attacking me, my body doesn't care about digesting my meal. It doesn't care or devote energy to my cell-mediated immune system. It's not repairing and regenerating my tissues while I'm being attacked, right? It's taking all of the resources that it has and putting me in a state where I can survive the situation that I'm in. And it wasn't until I got home and sat down in my chair when I was telling my wife the story that my back started hurting, right? So sympathetic dominance can actually numb us of the pain that we're feeling as well, right? Cortisol is a great painkiller. And so there's that division. And then we have the parasympathetic division. And it's in the parasympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system where every goal a patient has lives. So if you want better digestion, if you want better brain function, better memory, better sexual health, better reproductive health, better digestion, better immunity, better blood sugar regulation, all of those things happen when we're in a more parasympathetic state. And so the way we breathe is deterministic in what state we're going to be in. Now, our body is already using the breath. So if a lion walks in, we gasp, right? Immediately our breath changes. If we feel a sense of relief, immediately we sigh, right? If somebody says something funny, we laugh. That's a form of breath work. If something upsets us, right, we cry. That's a form of breath work. So our body is constantly using the breath to regulate our emotions without us even realizing it until I now explained it to you. So we have the ability, this is a two-way street, which means we have the ability to choose how we feel, right? So if I want to feel calm, I can start sighing, right? I can exaggerate the sigh, and guess what? I'll start producing the emotions of and the chemistry of relaxation. If I start taking sharp breaths, I'm going to increase my heart rate, right? And get myself into a more sympathetic dominant state. So I can choose the way I breathe to match the state that I'm in or to manage the state that I'm in. So if I'm in a fight or flight state and I want to calm my body down, right? The first way that I can do that is by slowing down my breath, right? Or if I'm going to run a sprint, right? I want to get my blood pressure up, my heart rate up. Guess what? I can start breathing rapidly and faster to get my body ready to go into that sprint mode, right? So we can use our breath. Our nervous system is always using our breath. But however, that's unconscious. We can consciously use our breath to choose how we feel and how we function.
It's such a powerful thing. And when you experience it yourself and you kind of begin the practice, you really start to just get the tip of the iceberg of like, oh, wow, there's really something to this. This can really affect my body in a positive way. So in your experience, how long does it actually take for someone to see the benefits from doing breath work? Does it take weeks, months, years? When should someone start looking to see some benefits from doing breath work?
Wow, it's a great question. It depends on what we're measuring. So if you're measuring heart rate, for example, I was just speaking at an event at the Cincinnati Reds Stadium last week, and one of the things that I demonstrated to them is the power of breathing, because the gentlemen that I was speaking with are high performance individuals, and they all wear wearables and things like that. So I had them check their resting heart rate before we started the breathing, and then I had them check their resting heart rate after we were done. And we were doing something called a bellows breath, which is a rapid breathing technique that increases adrenaline. And so their heart rates all went up 20 to 30 points within minutes of this breathing technique. Okay, just 3 rounds, 30 breaths. So it doesn't take long to see a shift. If I was measuring somebody's blood pressure, if I had them slow down their breathing, or if I had them do something called buzz breath, start humming for a few minutes, within minutes, we would see their blood pressure drop. Okay. If somebody was having a panic attack, right, and I taught them how to breathe correctly, or even an asthma attack, they would immediately start to feel better. Okay. So it doesn't take long to see a difference. This is why the body's first response is to change the breath, because it's the most rapid, fastest acting adaptogen that we have. So when you kind of know what you're measuring, you're going to see some pretty significant shifts. Now, if somebody wants to go deeper and have a spiritual awakening, then that takes about an hour to 75 minutes, where we take them through several rounds of breathing at different paces and cadences. And what that does for them is it turns off their default mode network, which is a network in our brain that kind of helps us relive the same life and relive the same day in and day out, tell ourselves the same stories. This is where our stories are written. And so by turning off that default mode network using specific breathing techniques, we're able to help people write a new story for themselves as well. Get rid of the old stories that aren't serving them, keep the ones that are, and then write some new ones so that they can live their best life moving forward. And these are profound, life altering shifts for people that take about 75 minutes. So it doesn't take long for people to see an improvement and see a difference in their breath. And then if you I encourage people to get an incentive spirometer. It's something that's about $25 on Amazon. So it measures your lung capacity. Lung capacity is the greatest predictor of lifespan. So something worth improving and working on if you have the capacity to do it. And an incentive spirometer will tell you how much you're breathing. So you can take a deep breath in, blow it all the way out, and then take a deep breath in slowly, right? And that'll measure your lung capacity. And you can work on improving that. And then you'll see within days, it significantly starts to improve as well. So by all measures, breath improves so many areas very, very rapidly in measurable ways.
So when someone is starting out working on maybe just starting a breath work routine or getting into doing breath work, how often should they be doing it? Is this an everyday thing? And how long should these sessions be if they're going to get into doing some breathwork exercises?
Yeah, great question. So I think of breath work, a lot of people, when they use the word breath work, they think of like 10 or 15, maybe half-hour spurts where they're breathing. My definition of breath work is working on your breath every chance you get. So it's a little bit different. And so I'll answer the question a little bit differently. So for example, for me, taping my mouth at night by placing a piece of tape vertically on my lips is a form of breath work, right? I'm working on my breath. It's passively working on it while I'm sleeping. But to me, if you do 10 minutes of breath work during the day and you mouth breathe at night, you're wasting your time, right? You're like farting in a hurricane, as they say. So you really want to focus on the 23,000 breaths that you take, not the 10 to 15 minutes of breath work that you do, because the greatest advantage is going to be in the 98% of how we breathe during the day. Okay. So first things first is how do we make breath work passive? How do we make it simple? How do we incorporate it into our entire day as much as we can? So first opportunity is mouth taping at night. Okay. That ensures nasal breathing while we sleep. So many benefits to that, which I'm sure we can get into if you want, but that's one place to start. The other thing I do is I attach my breath to something that I do often. So BJ Fogg wrote a book called Tiny Habits. And Tiny Habits talks about the psychology of change. BJ Fogg's students developed Instagram, for example, so they understand human behavior and psychology quite well. And what he learned or what he taught is the formula for behavior change. So it works really simple. It's one is behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt. So all of us have hopefully the motivation to breathe better, right? If you learn at least a couple of things today, you probably want to breathe a little bit differently, breathe better, breathe with more awareness. So motivation, that's pretty easy. And it has to be intrinsic, right? I can't have somebody yelling at me to breathe better every day, right? That's an extrinsic motivator. I need to have it come from within, right? So as somebody who's interested in your health, your breath is the cheapest, fastest, most proven way to change your health, most predictable way as well, right? 100 times out of 100, if I slow down my breath, my heart rate's going to go down, my blood pressure is going to go down. 100 times out of 100, if I start mouth breathing fast, my heart rate's going to go up, my blood pressure is going to go up. So it's a very predictable way to control your physiology. Not too many things are like that when it comes to our health. So motivation. Next is ability. We all have the ability to breathe a little bit better, to breathe a little bit slower, to breathe through our nose, right? To tape our mouth at night, right? Whatever the case may be. The third one is prompt. So this is the part that I really want to double down on. So the prompt is something that reminds us to do this thing. So what I do is I attach the thought of my breath. I attach it to something else that I do often throughout the day. So if you're somebody who checks your email often throughout the day, then let that be the prompt to check in with your breath. If you're someone who picks up your phone, every time you pick up your phone, check in with your breath. If you think of your kids often throughout the day, every time you think of your kids, think of your breath. So we just attach it, right? We just latch our breath on to something that we do often, or several things that we do often throughout the day. So I don't have to think about my breath. I just have to think about the things I'm already thinking about and then attach my breath to it. And so that for me was the biggest shift because I would just check in with myself. Am I breathing in a way that's appropriate for the state that I want to be in? So if I want to be in a calm, relaxed state, then I'm going to slow down my breath. If I'm going to be at the gym and I want to push myself, then I'm going to be breathing a certain way. If I'm doing a sprint, I'm going to breathe a certain way. If I'm recovering from that sprint, I'm going to breathe a certain way. So I'm working on my breath every opportunity I get because my breath is like the steering wheel for my nervous system, just like the steering wheel in my car, right? So I don't just work on the steering wheel, for 10 minutes of my drive. I'm working on the steering wheel the entire time that I'm driving. So that's how we want to think about our breath, is working on it throughout the day, because that's where it's going to give us the greatest benefits. And whatever situation you're in, there's a breath for that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned mouth taping. You mentioned kind of stacking or layering these habits on top of one another, like attaching the focus on your breath to other things that you do frequently during the day. So, what are some effective breathwork techniques, or what should people focus on if they want to improve their vagal tone, or if they want to improve that parasympathetic response, kind of get themselves into that rest and digest state?
All right. So, another great question. One of the things that we want to pay attention to is the length of our exhale. So, breathing slower will get us into a more parasympathetic state. Lengthening our exhale will double down on getting us into that parasympathetic state. So, I like to focus on something called coherence breathing. Coherence breathing is 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. For some people, that feels a little bit long. They can start at 4 and then work their way up to 6. 6 in, 6 out. So they can start at 4 in, 4 out. You want to feel a little bit of air hunger. The air hunger is a sign that CO2 levels are building up in your body. And what happens when that occurs is you're actually getting more oxygen to the tissue. So for some people, they feel like, oh, I need to breathe more. It's actually not that you need to breathe more. It's actually that you're not tolerant to CO2. The urge to breathe comes from CO2 intolerance, not oxygen deprivation. For every breath we take, there's about 5 additional breaths worth of oxygen in that breath, because we only consume about 20% of the oxygen with each breath that we take. So it's not more oxygen, it's building up CO2 tolerance. And so that's like one key thing for people to understand, the air hunger. 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. We can lengthen the exhale and we can go into a 4-7-8 breath, for example, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. This is a breathing technique Andrew Weil developed, 4-7-8 breath. You can do box breathing. Box breathing is breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold on empty for 4, and then you repeat that pattern. So you're inhaling for 4 seconds and your total exhale time is about 12 seconds. So you can see the ratio there is shifting. You can also hum. Humming is a great way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system because it lengthens the exhale, right? So you might breathe in for a count of 3 or 4 or 5, and then you're exhaling for several seconds because you're humming. What also happens when you hum is you activate your nasal mucosa and cilia, and you start increasing nitric oxide production as well. And when you increase nitric oxide production, your blood pressure will drop naturally, your circulation will also improve, and you're also going to have better cognitive function happening as well. So humming is a great way to get into a more parasympathetic state as well.
Awesome. So slowing down our breathing, maybe focusing on even counting the inhale, counting the exhale, maybe working our way from 4-second inhale, 4-second exhale down to 6 seconds inhale, 6 seconds exhale, or doing an exercise like you talked about, the 4-7-8 or the box breathing. Those are some simple ways people can start working on controlling their breath, and then stacking or layering or attaching the breath work, like the focus on it, to things to do many times throughout the day, maybe checking your phone even. Those are some excellent pieces of advice for people that are looking to improve that autonomic nervous system balance. I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about something else that you're really passionate about, that is metabolic health. And let's kind of connect the two. What role does breath work actually have in metabolic health? And how do you integrate breath work into your metabolic programs that you do?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, breathing is so crucial to metabolic function, right? It is one of our metabolic activities, and for every 10 pounds that somebody loses, we do a lot of weight loss in our practice. You know, not weight loss that's eat less, work out more, right? It's not kind of the bro weight loss techniques. We're using metabolic techniques to help people lose weight naturally by reducing inflammation, balancing their hormones naturally, improving rest, recovery, parasympathetic activity, all that good stuff. So breath ties into this very nicely because for every 10 pounds of body weight somebody loses, 8.4 of those pounds are through the lungs. So let me say that again. If somebody loses 10 pounds, 8.4 of those pounds are through the lungs. So we literally blow the fat out of our face, so to speak, because the byproduct of cellular respiration, the byproduct of mitochondrial function is water and CO2. So CO2 is a carbon dioxide that we exhale when we breathe out. And the water is something we sweat out. Some of it we breathe out. Some of it we sweat out. Some of it we pee out. That's where the weight goes. So by teaching people how to use their breath to shift into a more parasympathetic state, the body uses fat as an energy source. When we're in a sympathetic state, right? So if somebody is a short, shallow breather, mouth breather, they're going to be in a perpetual sympathetic dominant state. In that perpetual sympathetic dominant state, they're going to be using glucose as their primary energy source as opposed to using fat as their primary energy source. So we use the breath to shift them into a more parasympathetic state, which then utilizes fat as their primary fuel, which also helps all their other systems in their body work better, as we described earlier. And it helps them, the breath helps them get rid of that weight, right? So it's like a full circle moment when you think about it, how breath plays such a huge role in metabolic function, because it regulates the nervous system, it regulates the detoxification pathway. So 70% of detoxification actually happens through our lungs. The majority of our weight is expelled through our lungs. And then we also really focus on, we talk about sleep quality. Sleep is one of our most important functions, metabolic functions that we do, because that's when we heal, repair, and regenerate. And by helping people breathe correctly using mouth tape and nasal breathing at night, we also improve their quality of sleep. And when we improve their quality of sleep, their cravings start to change, their ghrelin and leptin hormones start working more efficiently and effectively. They make better choices, their cognition improves. So many things are connected to the way we breathe and impact our lives in ways that many people, including myself at one point, never connected the dots.
That's great. So I love how you said that we literally are blowing the fat, right out of our face. So if somebody had like a really fat head, it doesn't have to go very far. It just kind of, I don't think it works like that, does it?
Maybe.
I, I'm sorry. I just thought of that while you were speaking, so I apologize. Um, I really love how you're incorporating the nervous system into weight loss. And it's something that's so overlooked, especially in terms of metabolic programs and in terms of weight loss. If somebody is stuck in that sympathetic dominant state, if their stress response is always going, you're not going to move the needle. Or if you do, it's not going to stay because they're just going to go, their body is just going to slam right back into that. We got to store everything we can mode. And so I love that you're connecting breath, that you're connecting improving parasympathetic activity in with your metabolic program. It makes so much sense. And that's why your results are great and people are able to maintain them. I think that's amazing. You posted something on Instagram recently that really inspired me, and I wanted to bring it up with you if that's okay. I think I sent you this in advance, but I noticed a post that you had, and it said, in a study of 200 severely obese women done by Kaiser Permanente, over 60% of them were sexually assaulted as a child. And so by gaining weight, they were consciously creating the safety of being overlooked. And some call this body armor. What is your message to women out there who might be struggling with yo-yo weight issues? And what advice would you give to someone who may have had this type of an issue, but wants to be able to move past it, to get past that trauma from the past?
Yeah, great question. And as you indicated, a very loaded question because the answer could be different for each person who's listening to this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I will encounter with clients and my team will encounter with clients is that some people can't get past a certain weight. So whether it's like 200 pounds or 195, it's just like this number that they can't get past no matter what they do. And so then the question then naturally comes up for us, which is, when's the last time you weighed that much? And so then they start going through their memory Rolodex and they start realizing, oh, the last time I weighed this much, here's what happened to me. And it doesn't always have to be sexual trauma, right? Because there's different types of trauma that people experience.
Right.
It could be fat shaming, right? It could be skinny shaming, right? I know when I was in high school, a girl called me skinny. My friend's friend called me skinny. I never even met this person ever again. And it triggered something inside of me to gain as much weight as possible. So it became my mission to go from 140 pounds to 200 pounds. I got up to 187. And then I realized, what the heck am I doing? Right. So I was creating an armor in the opposite direction. Right. Yeah. So there's different ways that we might be triggered. And women, unfortunately, are, just more likely to be sexually harassed or, looked at as objectified, unfortunately, just the world we live in. And they don't like that, right? I mean, nobody likes that really, as much as guys might think they like that. It's nothing to be envious of. And so it's something that they need to work through. So we always have to ask ourselves, man, I can't get past this weight. When's the last time I weighed that much? And a lot of times people will feel naked once they get past a certain weight. Okay. Or they might feel like, man, I can't get past this weight because when I get past this weight, people start commenting. Right. And what people don't like, women especially, is if this is a trauma that they've had, is they don't like when people come up to them like, oh my God, you look so beautiful. You look so great, right? Like you're radiating. They don't want to hear that because they don't want to be the center of attention. So if that triggers them, then there's something deeper that they need to explore. And ways to explore that could be, might be seeing a therapist. If they haven't, it might be forgiveness, if that's possible. It might be going through a breathwork experience, like the ones I take people through. It might be plant medicine, right? So they've got to find a modality that they makes them feel safe and a person that makes them feel safe to take them through that journey, right? And it could be a heavy road to travel for some people. You just never know what's going to come up. And sometimes these emotions are buried so deep. And we prepare people for this, right? So it's one of the questions we ask if people have experienced any significant trauma. And some people say no, because they buried it so deep, they don't even realize they've been traumatized. And then it comes up as we start peeling the layers away, because it's not just fat that we're holding on to emotions as well. That's something that it's important for people to realize, is that, everyone's, carrying and wearing their stories. It's not just the food that they're wearing their stories.
Yeah, doing structural work, it's not uncommon to come across something like this as well, as you release something. And I'm sure you probably had experiences doing so much ART and in soft tissue work. You work on something that may have an association with a very traumatic experience. People might have an emotional response and begin crying or begin sobbing during treatment. And you ask, are you okay? Yeah, I don't know why I'm crying. And then eventually they might uncover that it's, the injury or that area is related to some traumatic experience or some traumatic thing. Mm-hmm. And like you said, we're carrying it around, we're wearing it. And so it's such a powerful component of every type of health issue that's out there, but especially with weight management, metabolic issues. But to really heal, that's something that a lot of people really may need to look more into. Maybe that could be a roadblock for them. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I really love that you address those type of things in your program if you need to. So When it comes to mindset shift, I noticed that you mentioned that 99% of your participants in your program, they seek more than just weight loss. So what are some mindset shifts that you observe in clients as they progress through your program, and how do you go about kind of, getting those mindsets to shift or changing their minds, so to speak?
Yeah, I think we never try to change anyone. And I know that's not what you're intending to say, um, but we try to help people remember who they are. So many people forget who they are, the essence of who they are, the brilliance of who they are, the beauty of who they are. And so changing people means we're trying to get them to be something that they aren't. Remembering is getting them to be more of who they are. And so that in and of itself is a mindset shift, right? In
Yes.
terms of how we present it to people. And what we're helping them understand is how powerful their body is. We're helping them become an ally of their body instead of seeing their body as an enemy. We're getting them to speak to themselves differently, look in the mirror, and have a different vocabulary, and also be kind and gentler with themselves. The only thing that's working for you 24/7 your entire life is your body, right? So the words that we use play a huge role in how that person's going to show up day to day, moment to moment. And then the other thing we help our clients do is write a new identity. And the identity of, and really when I say new, it's new to them, but it's really the identity of who they are and how they want to show up in the world. Mm-hmm. So we have them go through this identity exercise where they rewrite them, kind of their character description as if they're a superhero in their own story, which they are. And we write out the attributes of this person. So my alter ego, or my superhero ego, is Super Sachin. Super Sachin wakes up at a certain time. He drinks certain things first thing when he wakes up, right? He uses the bathroom with no phone, right? He uses a squatty potty, he brushes his teeth a certain way. So like there's a way of functioning when you're at that level and you're adopting that identity. So then the question for me, some people say, what would Jesus do, right, when they're encountering a difficult challenge or issue? And I say, what would Super Sachin do, right? How would Super Sachin show up in this situation? What food would he eat, right? Or what exercise would he do? Or would he go to the gym today or not? Today, Super Sachin didn't go to the gym because my recovery index was not where I wanted it to be, right? So that having that self-awareness, right, is also very important as well, right? And so we help people rewrite their identity so they can remember who they are, and then that helps them in decision making, and it takes all the emotion out of decision making. It's when we don't know who we are, decision making is difficult, but when we know who we are, decision making is really easy.
That's great. We've covered a lot of stuff, everything from breath work to mindset to metabolic health. But in your opinion, what factors should practitioners spend more time learning and working with, and what factors should practitioners maybe spend less effort and less time on?
Oh, great question. I mean, it's going to be different for everybody, but I would say like what I really love focusing on is passive health strategies. Yeah. So something that doesn't require any additional effort. For example, like I have a grounding mat on my desk, right? That's a passive health strategy. Of course, I can go outside, but it's raining today, so less likely to happen, right? I can sit here, been sitting at my desk for many hours today, and I'm grounded. I can change the light bulbs in my home, right? That's a passive health strategy. So one-time investment, continuous passive benefit. I can get a good chair, right, to support myself, right? These are things that, small investments or big investments, depending on what quality you like. But these are things that can make a big difference for us. Fabrics, right? So all my clothes are cotton, wool, or linen instead of synthetic materials like petroleum-based clothing like polyester, rayon, acrylic. So I would encourage people to do more of that, because that is going to have a bigger, more long-term, timeless effect on somebody's health. And I would
I love
say
that.
wearables are another great way to tap into health practices to help people become more self-sufficient and self-aware. I would encourage practitioners to use more of that. And in terms of like what to do less of, there's so many things that we can learn. But I would say most people think that they need to learn one more thing before they can help people. And I would say less certifications, less learning, more doing, more putting your message out there, more serving people is probably some good advice for most people, because I feel like everyone's chasing that next certification or that next course, and it's distracting them many ways. It's a productive distraction, but it's distracting them from really going out there and helping people, because most people aren't even doing the basics.
Yeah, I love that. So, and I think you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you have any inspiring words for our listeners who are thinking about taking the next steps towards improving their health? What advice would you give someone who feels like maybe getting healthy is just too difficult and they just really haven't focused on it because they just feel overwhelmed by so much information and that it might be too hard for them?
Yeah, great question. So I would say just keep it simple, right? Meet yourself where you're at and then take one step forward. Um, you know, in terms of like, I just spoke to a group of people, and the interesting thing about this audience was, in order to be in that audience, you had to have a net worth of 10 million or more. Okay. So very different than most rooms, right? So this is a very exclusive, group of people. And what I realized is that the more money they made, the more they were interested in their health, because what they realize is the ultimate wealth is health. So what if you could just focus on being healthy? Being healthy has anywhere you could put your money, being healthy has the biggest ROI. If you're doing it right, you're going to see incredibly fast results. Okay. And you get to keep it, and you get to take it everywhere you go, right? Like, I could buy a nice car, but I can't take it everywhere I go. I could buy a nice house, but I don't take it everywhere I go, right? I could buy nice clothes, but I can't wear them all at the same time, right? So you're never going to get a better ROI than your health. And the more money you make, the more you will value your health. But when it comes to being healthy, because being healthy is so simple, accessible, and affordable, like, literally everyone can afford to be healthy, because nobody can
I
afford
agree.
not to be healthy, right? And most of the things that you need to do are free, right? Watching the sunrise, spending time outdoors, slowing down your breath, right? Turning off the lights after the sun goes down. I mean, these things actually, eating less, intermittent fasting, like, these things all save you money. And no matter where you're at in the spectrum, they're all going to save you money if you do it right. And so I would encourage people to make that investment of their mental faculties, financial capabilities into their health, because it's always going to pay dividends. And the sooner you start, the better, right? Like, I'm 47. I've been at this, game for quite some time now, right? Almost 20 years or 21 years now in practice. And I still wish I started sooner. Right. So there's people who are my age who are just starting their journey, and it's awesome, right? Like, it's never too late to get started. Your body is very forgiving. And when you do the right things, it's like rolling a boulder down a hill, instead of what some people think health is. Like, it's not rolling a boulder up a hill, it's rolling a boulder down a hill, because your body doesn't resist. It's going to be there. It's going to be like, dude, what have you been waiting for? I'm here to help you. Let's go. Right. And so I would encourage everyone to take that leap of faith in themselves. And when you're healthy, it's like the trunk of a tree. Every branch grows as the trunk grows. But most people, what they'll do is they'll try to grow an individual branch. They'll try to grow their business bigger than who they are. It never works. Or they'll try to grow their money bigger than who they are. It never works. So start with yourself, and every area of your life will get better. And here's the thing. You can't be a 10 out of 10 dad if you have 7 out of 10 health.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to make that point as well. When you talked about return on investment, when you feel good, when you have good energy levels, it just permeates into every area of your life. Your relationships, it permeates into your work, it permeates into your ability to focus, as you mentioned, parenting, so many areas. And when you don't feel good, the opposite is true as well. It affects everything. It affects your relationships, your ability to work, so it is so worth it whenever you finally decide to take those. So the best thing to do is just start now. And as you mentioned, so many people wish they had started sooner, including yourself. And I'm in that boat as well. I wish I would have paid more attention to it earlier on. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I want to say thank you. I appreciate you joining me and taking the time out, but I also want to say that I truly recognize and appreciate your generosity, your kindness. And one thing that I have noticed about you over the years, and I've known you probably longer than you've known me, just from seeing you at a conference or whatever, is that you're not a person that just talks about being kind. You're not a person that just talks about serving others. You practice what you preach. You actually walk the walk. So thank you, and thank you for your example.
I appreciate that, Joshua. Thank you so much. Enjoyed our conversation. Great questions you asked today. And I'm really looking forward to the next time we get to see each other in person.
Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Discover Health podcast. Remember, your health is a journey, not a destination. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next week.